Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. Today we're looking at some new cards within Power of the Elements. These are albaz support cards. Albaz the Ashen is a level 4 Dart Attribute Dragon type effect monster with 1800 attack and 0 defense. You can only use the third effect of this card's name once per turn. 1. This card's name is treated as Fallen of Albaz while on the field or in the graveyard. 2. If there's a level 8 fusion monster in your graveyard, this card gains 200 attack for each monster in your graveyard. Also, other monsters you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's effects. And 3. If a monster you control leaves the field due to your opponent's effects, while this card and a fusion monster are in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. I think this is actually a decent type of monster. For starters, it treats itself as Fallen of Albaz, and that's the fusion material often required for their monsters, so it can actually treat itself as the fusion material for any of those fusion monsters, which prevents you from having to search for the actual Fallen of Albaz. Secondary ability, if you happen to have a level 8 fusion monster, ironically Fallen of Albaz will kind of meet those requirements. It gains 200 attack for each monster in your graveyard. Since this is a fusion based deck, you will likely have many monsters in your graveyard, and they don't have to be different names, it's just for each monster in your graveyard. So if you've got 10 in there, it can become a 3800 attack monster, assuming this is nearer the end of the game state. It does also mean that none of your other monsters can be targeted by your opponent's card effects, so they'd have to go after this first before threatening anything else. The third effect is also okay, because if you happen to have a fusion monster in your graveyard and a monster happens to leave because of your opponent's card effect, you're just able to special summon this card. It's a decent revival effect, and unlike many of the other cards which do require you to banish this monster, say for example if it has to reoccur, this does not have that requirement to it, so potentially you can be repeating this process. The only limitation to this is it's only when your monster is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, not your own, and also it cannot be destroyed in terms of by battle to trigger off this effect. Otherwise I think that would be too broken for that effect. The second card is Branded Separation. This is a normal trap card. You can only activate one card with this card's name once per turn. 1. Tribute 1 fusion monster, then target 2 monsters among either graveyard or that are banished except fusion monsters. Special summon one of those monsters on each side of the field, or if you tributed a fusion monster that used Fallen of Albaz as material, you could special summon both of those monsters to your field in face-up defense position instead. The purpose of this card is just being able to revive certain monsters depending on what you need. It gives you some more stability. You can then tribute over a monster, for example, or then use its effect. It doesn't negate that. Potentially, if you have tributed a fusion monster that has used Fallen of Albaz, then you get to manipulate and take 2 monsters, which can then be used as part of fusions or for their own effects. I think it's definitely a useful card, and it's a good way of disrupting your opponent, especially if they're trying to target specific cards in the graveyard. If you're able to revive, then it stops them from triggering off certain types of effects. What do you guys think of these two cards? Personally, I don't like the albaz archetype. I think it's a little bit too broken, and it's getting constantly more support. The more support it gets, the more annoying it becomes. But I can still take my opinion a little bit away from it and separate that to understand that it does become a very powerful deck. Whatever you think, I'd love to hear those in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to watch the end screen here to watch another episode of the Power of the Elements discussion.